What's up, folks, and welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about one of the most hyped debuts of 2024 in the fantasy genre, and that is The Silverblood Promise by James Logan. So, this book has been making the rounds on booktube. I didn't really plan to read it right up until I saw so many people making comparisons to Scott Lynch. And it's been a while since I read something in his vein. I'm even considering rereading The Lies of Lachlan more sooner rather than later. So I thought, why the hell not just jump in on this? So I did. And what is the Silverblood Promise about? So we have Logan who is pretty much your standard nobleman. He did something pretty stupid in a duel, and as a result he was ostracized by pretty much society. He became like a gambler, Rolling Stone kind of character for a number of years, harboring quite a bit of resentment to the whole over the whole situation and his father's response to it. And then his father gets killed, and with his dying, with his last moments, he wrote with his blood a message for Lucan, essentially pointing him to this city, this far off city that Lucan isn't aware of the family having any connections with, and to this person who he's never heard of before. So obviously Lucan sets out to find out, to kind of delve into this mystery, and what he becomes embroiled in is an escalating series of events that makes for some really great reading. So what is the Silverblood Promise at its core? This is a fantasy adventure murder mystery that by the end of it lays the groundwork to become an epic fantasy of both epic and mythic proportions. It's got a lot going on. It's got quite a lot going on. There's a lot to love about this series, but it does have one pretty big flaw that I'm going to touch on as I go through it. The first thing I do want to talk about is just the world that we're introduced to in this book. This is a vibrant, rich, really well realized world. We're pretty much immersed into it right from the get-go after Lucan sets out and he arrives at this new city. It's a very fascinating place, to say the least, and it introduces us to some elements that do set this, that as much as this book very much takes place within a medieval urban setting, it does lay the foundation for it to become quite something more fascinating than this, to say the least. Like unsurprisingly, one of the strongest things about this book is the world building, right? Like, I feel with fantasy novels in general, that's typically one of the strongest things you will read about, with rare exceptions. So there's that. In terms of the writing, James Logan is a pretty good writer. Like, he involves a lot of stuff in here, as that description of what this book even is should highlight. He's a really good writer, really good at putting things together. A lot of the elements in this book, there's nothing new here, but the way that they're used and the way that they're incorporated is pretty well done. The characters, they all fit tropes that we're very familiar with, but the way he deploys them and the way he uses them in the story, the way he breathes life into them, it's well done. It's well done. One side character in particular, I think she's going to steal the show with this book. She was easily the best part of this book for me, and I do think that she adds quite a bit of the entertainment and the charm that this book has. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if she's the standout character of this book for most people. She certainly was for me. And it's just a testament to how good James Logan is at drawing out these characters. Like, even the side ones and the characters of lesser note, they're certainly well fleshed out. There's no mixing them up, there's no homogeneousness, I guess I could say, if that's even a word, among them. Everyone's their own unique person, so it's well done. The plot was a bit interesting because I found it quite recursive. So, for example, Lucan will need to go and do he need to go and hit plot point A, but before he can hit plot point A, he has to achieve plot point B, and before he can hit plot point B, he has to go achieve plot point C, and it kind of spirals like that, and then it unwinds just as rapidly. So it kind of helped keep things going, keep things interesting, keep them fresh, because like we were constantly bouncing from one thing to the other, and over the course of this novel, like it helped maintain an intensity and attention that really worked well. It was fun. It was fun to read. Like this book, a word has been thrown around quite a bit for it is swashbuckling, and I do see it to an extent. I do agree to an extent, but I would say it's on the lower end of the scale. Like there's not much swashing, there's not much buckling, and there's certainly not a lot of flamboyancy in this novel. They are present, they are there, but if I had to put him on a scale, I would say he's like on the lower end. Scott Lynch is more on the middle, and then at the extreme end you have someone like Sebastian de Castell. For anyone who's kind of trying to get a gauge on what I'm talking about there. But it is enough to keep this very much light, keep this engaging, keep it a fun read. There's a lot of dialogue, a lot of character moments that really add to the entertainment and the charm of this book. Especially with that side character that I mentioned. Like she's a very vibrant personality. And I personally feel like her inclusion in a lot of the scenes is what adds to the entertainment of the book as a whole. My biggest complaint of this book is actually, and I think the one critical flaw it has that I don't really recall seeing too many people touch on, is the dialogue. So for the most part, the dialogue is great. It's well done. The problem is that it's often used as a vehicle to tell us everything about this book and not show us very much. It's used to infodump quite a bit of the character backstories, to infodump a lot of the world and the history and the setting. It's even used to infodump like the grand plot, the grand scheme of that's behind everything. It does variate a little bit from what we're told, but not by any particular margin. This is very much a book that uses tell and not show, and it was a bit tiresome to read after a while, because you would kind of have to go through these parts that really don't fit well given the characters of these given the characters that we're dealing with. At the same time, there are some parts of it that fit. For example, Logan is a nobleman, and his sidekick is essentially a street urchin. So there is a disconnect in like the knowledge and the life experience and the world experience that these two have. So oftentimes, like they'll essentially educate one another and educate the reader as a result. So those parts worked really well. But a lot of it just didn't. And another thing that really worked well about this book is actually the character of Logan himself. So a lot of the times a character like him, where he's essentially like this Rolling Stone gambler kind of just going with the flow nobleman who with no real responsibility or no real career or anything of that sort. He's often thrown into the trope in particular is often thrown into situations where he somehow along the way had the life experiences and the skill set to cope and to achieve the objectives of whatever the situation is. That's not the case with Logan. Like throughout this entire book, Logan pretty much bumbles his way through it. He's consistently in over his head. He's out of his depth. And a lot of it is really, you have to really chalk up to him being lucky. And honestly, by the stupidity of the villains. Because that's one thing that also was kind of weird about this book. Like, maybe it's because of the way that James Logan tells us a lot and doesn't show a lot. We have this whole situation where the villain comes off as like this campy 80s spy villain thriller kind of guy, where he essentially lays out the entire situation of what his grand scheme is. We get like these big reveals, like a lot of things that could have been shown to us was just straight up told to us, and it was just it didn't work. It just didn't work. Like it didn't fit the story well. It was the most jarring part of it. It definitely could have been handled better. But all that being said, this is still very much a very fun read, a very entertaining read. Like this book has a lot of charm. It has a lot of elements that you can already see will go on to be quite interesting, quite fascinating. Like the mystery in here is there's a lot of mystery to this whole situation. We have a lot of mystery within the subplot of this book. We have the overarching mystery that's still going to be continued, because there definitely will be other books. Like this book very much, it doesn't end on a cliffhanger, but it does set the stage for the forthcoming books. We even got a little tease of the upcoming setting and these kind of things. So yeah, like the mystery is going to be a very predominant element of the books, I should hope, moving forward. And it does set the stage for also quite a bit of epic and mythic elements to be incorporated based on like the world building that's done and that kind of thing. So all in all, I think I have to describe this as a very accomplished debut. It's not without its flaws, but overall it's very well done. It's very entertaining. It's very fun. The characterization, I think overall I have to say I like the characterization, and I can easily see this being a book that is going to make quite a few people's top 10 list of 2024. It certainly has that to it, but I wouldn't say that this is a book you need to drop and go read right now. Like there's certainly other stuff out there that I think is better, frankly, especially if you haven't read Scott Lynch himself. Like this book is like Scott Lynch light. So I would say check those out first, but at the same time, the Silverblood Promise is a book to keep relatively high on your TBR, and the series in general I think is one that is going to be quite it's going to be one of those installments that everyone looks forward to in the forthcoming year, or whenever. It's going to be one of the most talked about series for sure. Little doubt about that. Like you can see this book just had the components of everything that makes a really good fantasy book. So yeah, that's my thoughts on one of the most hyped books on booktube right now. If you've read this, if you're thinking about reading this, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you when I see you.